For this last session, we're gonna try something new. A lot of the other sessions that we've been running here have been run for many years at the international conference and at other workshops, and they have been refined and fine-tuned. And so this is not. And the goal here is to address any questions that you might have, just like in your classes. I am on the Leadership Council for the Learning Assistant Alliance. And so the Leadership Council has 10 members. And the way it's designed is it's a work in progress to figure out how we want this to run, but there are basically 10 realms. I cannot tell you what all 10 of them are. I'm in charge of research and assessment. That's my realm. One of them is communications, and another one is workshops and site visits. I don't know what their role in organizing this was, but there's a process, and one of my questions for the panel will be about workshops and site visits. And so the LA Alliance is I don't know, 80 to 90 institutions that use learning assistants. The membership model is something that we're working on developing. We don't have a formalized membership model yet. And then the goal of the LA Alliance is really to use all of the people and the institutions to bring together all these resources so that we can support each other in expanding or initiating our LA programs at our institutions. And so part of that is really centered around the LA Alliance website, which probably everyone, has anyone not been to the LA Alliance website at all yet? So one person, okay. It's Ashok.
Yep.
I just wanted to call him out, and I remembered his name. And so the website, everyone's been there. It has three main areas. Learning Assistant Campus, which is a program for hiring LAs. And I'm going to ask Manher about that in a minute, because he's using it. The other one is Lasso, and I've talked a little bit about Lasso, and I'll ask myself a question about Lasso in a little bit. And then the other one is Resources, which have been developed by people just like the people in this room, right? People who have come together, they figured out a solution to a problem, and then they organized and put those solutions onto the internet for everyone to benefit from. And maybe I'll ask Laurel about Resources. I don't know. Okay, and then I also want to open it up to questions after I go through a couple questions from all of you, in case there's any burning questions that still remains that you want to ask all of us. And so maybe the first question I'll ask for everybody is, well, Jeff has a great answer for what an L agent is, and then maybe you guys can each talk about how you became an L agent. And then I'll tell how I became an L agent.
All right. So this word L agent, it's kind of an unusual word, but the way I think of it is as an agent of change that advocates, or who advocates for implementing the LA model at the department, institution level. So this idea of someone who's working to improve student learning through the LA model. That's the way I think of the role of an LA agent, yeah. And then how I became involved, I honestly don't remember. It just sort of happened. I became engaged with, I attended a regional LA workshop about 6 years ago at the University of Maryland and started collaborating with folks at that workshop. So Chandra Turpin, who was the host at that particular workshop, taught the pedagogy course at Maryland. I was teaching the pedagogy course at NDSU. We started talking about this, and then that led to more connections. And so it's really important for you to understand that the Alliance is really about a network of people who are engaged in LA programs and working within the LA model. And because I was really interested in pedagogy, then that led to other connections to the point of, hey, Jeff, would you come and to Boulder and lead a pedagogy workshop as part of the workshop? And said, of course, yeah, that sounds great. And I've done that now for 5 years. And so I don't honestly remember like when it sort of happened, but then I was just connected with all these really great people, and like, of course, I want to keep contributing and gaining from the people I work with.
Yeah, the Learning Assistant program, in my opinion, is one of the most generous programs there's around in terms of sharing of resources and sharing of ideas, and it is really a big network of people. And has anybody met Valerie Otero? Okay, yeah, so if you know Valerie Otero, she is a highly, highly energetic person, and she's in the School of Education at CU Boulder. She started the program, and I haven't ever asked her this, maybe some of you have. I don't think she ever expected that in 15 years she would have this network of people, and that would be called an International LA Alliance. And
I asked her this question. So we were just in Boulder a couple weeks ago, and I asked her this question. I said, Valerie, did you ever think this program would be what it is now, with this big workshop, this huge connection of people? And she said, yes and no. Yes, right when shortly after she started the program at CU Boulder, she went to a reunion. It was like a 20-year reunion or something, and everybody was asked, as part of her high school reunion, was asked to write like a little news article thing. And so she wrote this little article saying, the LA program at CU Boulder is amazing. It's transforming everything in education. This is like right when it was starting at CU Boulder. And so she wrote this article as if it was going to be amazing in the future. And she's like, so I kind of predicted the growth at CU Boulder, but she said what I didn't expect is how it would get spread across the country. And in fact, across international waters as well, because there are folks that are coming from other countries, particularly during the Boulder workshop, to take this back to their home institutions elsewhere. So she kind of did, but kind of didn't expect it. And
she has said, CU Boulder's keeping track of everything and doing the website and leading all these things, but we don't have to, and in some ways, like, maybe we shouldn't. And so that's how the LA Alliance came about, was to bring in more people and have more ideas and to distribute the leadership. And how I became an agent is I went to a talk at the Research and Science Teaching meeting where Bud Talbot, who sometimes comes and who's also an LA agent, he gave a talk about the LA program, and I was a new faculty at CU. And I thought, oh, we need the LA program at the Denver campus. And then, lo and behold, 8 months later, his application comes in. I'm on a search committee for a position. I'm like, oh, I like him. And if he comes, then he can be my partner starting the LA program. And he was one of the people that they hired at that point. And he actually was Valerie's PhD student. Anyway, so he said, Val, I got this other person in the science department, and she can help us with the workshop. So I think I'm an LA agent partly because of that, and partly because I'm local to Boulder, so I'm very cheap. I only live like 12 miles away, so they don't have to fly me, and I say yes. I always say yes, so.
It's how I became an LA agent?
Yes.
Yeah, how you became an
Well, I guess the story is very similar, except in 2010, a chemistry professor at BU and two postdocs, science education professor and two chemistry postdocs went out to the international conference in Boulder. And they came back pants on fire about the LA model. And they say, there's great, and LAs do this and this. And I went to the meeting and I heard about it, and I say, well, that's great. If you want to give me an LA, that's fine, but I don't want anything else to do with the program. Like LAs, you can take care of it, do all the things too, but I still want to take it if you're going to give me one for free. And now, from there, I started using LAs, and then the email came from Valerie, do you want to come out and help run the workshop in 2013 and in 2014. And in 2015, we had our own workshop at BU, and then the next year. And so I figured I've actually facilitated the depth video about 25 times, actually, too. I co-direct the Learning Assistant program at BU. I'm on 2 NSF grants that involve research about LAs. So it's kind of funny to say that I wanted nothing to do with LAs when I first had it. So you can remember that for all of your faculty who might be like, oh, that's nice, and I'm kind of lukewarm about it too. You never know where you'll end up being.
Definitely never know. I actually attended the first workshop in Boulder as a participant in 2013. And then from then on, I don't know, it just happened where you just join, invited to come and facilitate and plan. So I took the position as a director here. and also I'm part of an COPI on NSF research on LA, about LAs. So it's pretty simple for me. One thing I want to say about the Alliance, you know, you can imagine like an open source community that is really willing to share, but also to listen. And there's a lot of there's a lot of dialogues that are happening that couldn't have been happening without the Alliance, because it really facilitates all of us from so many institutions, and institutions that are very, very different, and us that are very different. And so I really encourage you to explore it and look at the resources, really look at the website. It has a lot of things. And even though you attended here, also consider going to the international workshop that happens every year at the end of October, beginning of November. So consider doing that too.
Can I do one follow-up on that? So Hagit mentioned the international workshop, but there also are pretty regularly the spring workshops, and there may be some spring workshops, some spring regional workshops that are interesting to your institutions. There are two scheduled, one in the spring, one in the summer, that are focused on 4-year, 2-year partnerships. So I know there are a couple of community college programs here that might find that helpful. Also, Maryland is running another regional this spring that's focused on engineering. So it's about LA's an engineering program, so that might resonate with your institution as well. So know that there's lots of resources that are available to help advance your program.
That was great, Jeff. That was exactly what I was going to say.
Oh,
so,
sorry.
So I wanted to talk about. I'll briefly talk about my own path into being an L agent. And so that's how. And then I get hired in this postdoc, and they're like, "Hey, would you like to come to this conference in 2 weeks and run some workshops?" And I'm like, "Great, yeah, that sounds great. I can do that." And and then the next year they gave me different workshops, and then I come here and I got at least one of the same workshops, thank you, Hagit, and this one. And so that's how I kind of got roped into being an L agent. And I can't imagine like going forward in my career and being somewhere and teaching without LAs in my course. I mean, I can't imagine it, but it's pretty disappointing to think about. And then, so one of the pathways I wanted to talk about for some of the new L agents was, and I cannot remember their names, Wisconsin Stout. But their goal, they wanted to run a regional workshop. They have LAs, and they want to expand their program and then like develop collaborations with nearby. So they, this spring, are running
St. Cloud?
St. Cloud, yeah.
St. Cloud State, yeah.
St. Cloud State.
Yeah.
It's all the Midwest. It's in the Midwest. Which is near North Dakota.
Well, it's flyover country, I get it.
Yeah.
I relate to those people, so I have empathy.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You are both from Montana. I don't know
Yeah.
if you're
True.
There are different parts of Montana. It's a big state.
I'm a big city Montana guy.
The big city.
Yeah.
Right. Which is, I don't know if there's a small enough part of Miami to compare to the biggest part. So what they did is they wanted to run a regional workshop, for developing their own LA program and developing themselves. And then they coordinated with Lori Langdon and the other folks who organized the regional workshops. And they came out this year to Boulder, and they ran a bunch of sessions there. And then they're going to take that knowledge back and run a workshop at St. Cloud this spring. And so that's one way people kind of move into being L agents. Another is like if you just have some amazing thing that you did and you wanted to share that at the international conference, and you could just talk to the leadership council about that idea of proposing a new session. None of that stuff's formalized, so it's all informal. And I think one of the goals, as I was talking to Laird, who snuck up, is just getting more L agents in the region in Florida, right, to support each other and collaborate and support regional workshops in this area to help push course transformations at everybody's institutions. Okay, so now I have a couple of other questions. or the panel. But maybe I'll take one question or two questions from you guys. Does anybody have a question that they would like to ask? Yeah.
So, do you have a plan to make a mailing list for all these workshops? That would be helpful because I'm new and this is the first one, LA conference I'm attending, and that also by accident. So therefore, if there is a mailing list that I get the mails of the LA conferences, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna repeat the question in case everyone. So that he asked if there would be a mailing list, and I know at the international conference, in my folder I got a list of emails for everyone who attended. So that's pretty common practice, but he will be able to answer.
So I think it's a good accident first, that you're here. And I think when you sign when you have an account with the Alliance, there are some emails that are sent,
Do you have an
right?
account with the Alliance?
Account with the Alliance?
With the Alliance, with
That's
the
the
Learning
respect.
Assistant Alliance in Colorado,
No, I don't.
which is the website is.
So if you go to learningassistantalliance.org
Okay.
and you create an account, you look up your institution,
Yes.
and when you do so, you can also find all of the other people at your institution who are interested in having LAs. It's a way to connect with people. I was doing a workshop at University of Southern Maine, and somebody asked about, I think, a finance class. Can I use LAs in finance? I said, I don't know. Let's go to the Alliance and let's sign up for an account and find it. And he found that there was another finance professor at his institution who was actually interested in using LAs. We didn't even have to go that very far, and had someone that he could talk to. So we encourage all of you to do that, and then you could find more information, including all of the information about the workshops that are upcoming. So it's kind of opt-in to receive that information.
And then I think you would be on the Alliance distribution list, so that would give you information about upcoming workshops.
I think one of the recent messages that we got has a direct link to this signing up for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yes.
And some places if you sign up, you're signing up for 5 emails a day, and that's not the case for this
No.
one, just to let you know, you may get 1 or 2 a year. Or maybe a few more than that, but not much.
I don't get it.
There's a question.
Yeah, next question, yeah. I think you have to press it with.
That's okay.
You get-
So
yeah.
my question was, you said that it's an international organization of you have people from other places. I was just wondering what was the representation like, the international representation?
Well, it's pretty small, but there's Japan, Turkey, Norway,
India.
Mexico,
India.
India,
Korea.
Korea.
Oh,
Norway.
Norway.
I said Norway.
Oh, sorry.
So, I mean, there's a handful of countries from around the world. There were probably 5 to 8 people international that had flown internationally into the international conference in Boulder. So it's becoming less and less of a stretch to call it the international conference. You know, about 10% of the attendants are from outside the country.
Oh, Ireland. Yeah.
Oh, Ireland, yeah.
Yeah, Turkey was there. Ireland. Yep. So a handful of countries. Yep. And you know, they have different structures and resources and issues and cultures. So it's, in a lot of ways, it's nice talking to them to kind of like maybe appreciate like some of the advantages and be aware of some of the disadvantages that I've had in the institutions I've been at. Any other questions? All right, I can ask. Okay, so a couple of things that I've heard people talking about that I want to throw at the committee here is just hiring learning assistants and then paying learning assistants. So I was going to start with Manhur to talk about LA campus, and then maybe everyone could talk about just their own experiences with hiring and paying learning assistants.
So I already mentioned that we started small and then kind of grew really fast, and somehow I ended up like co-running the program. And one of the challenges that we had, because we thought, oh, it's just 1 or 2 courses, maybe 10 or 20 LAs, and now we're 30 courses and 130 LAs a semester, and managing all of that. So LA Campus is a tool that the Learning Assistant Alliance has developed. It grew out of the tool that actually manages the LAs at Boulder, which is the second largest LA program in the country now. But it's still for the Alliance to use. So what it allows you to do is, again, collect student applications, which we have a website that does too. But I think the really interesting part of it is the faculty course proposals. In that what happens when you start to grow and students actually then go across campus and say, I want to have LAs in my organic chemistry class and I want to have LAs in this class, is that not every class is LA ready, right? We would like it to be that, how do you know that a class is LA ready? Well, if you take the LAs out, will the class still function the way that it is? Because if you're just adding LAs on top, it's not perhaps truly integrated. So the LA campus actually allows you and the departmental coordinators I mentioned before to have this conversation with your faculty who are interested in using LAs and ask them questions about what active learning strategies they use. Have they thought about the time commitment that LAs have? It goes through the number of LAs you might need. Sometimes we find people say, I only need 2 LAs, but they might actually need 3. So LA Campus is a tool that we're starting to use at Boston University and testing it out there such that it can manage, because like I said, you never know if you're going to go from 10 LAs to 100 LAs in the blink of an eye. And even when I talk to people who are saying, like, well, I don't need that now, I'm just starting off small, I really wish that we had that in place in the beginning, because it also sets up the idea that faculty should think carefully before. Maybe it's not quite the right time to use LAs, taking baseline data, using the LASSO assessment tool, then implementing LAs and being able to compare is an important part of the process.
So at FIU we have a big system, and I have to say that we don't have sophisticated tools just yet. We're hoping to get LA Campus, but we're using very simple tools, survey tools, that allows our faculty to apply for funding for LAs. And when they do that, and it's something that we also got from Colorado, they have an elaborated application. It doesn't take too long, but they kind of have time to think, what is it that they want to do in their classroom? What is the current instruction? What is the future instruction? What is it that they want to do with LAs? Is it actually ready? And that allows us to review and give some feedback and think with them if their classroom is ready for having LAs. And this kind of, they have to apply every October and February, they apply every semester because funding is being considered every semester. And then they apply, and so this is how it works for faculty. At the same time, LAs are applying. Now, we're centralized, but the faculty are choosing their own LAs. So they advertise that they're looking for candidates every semester. We ask them to take the top 20%. We remind them that students do not have to have a 4.0 GPA because you need to feel some struggle in order to be in LA. So they recruit everything, all of the the student applications are sent to us, and we distribute it to departments and to faculty. And then they select their students, schedule brief meetings just to have a conversation to see if it's a good fit, and then they recruit them. Okay, so they have their little teams and they take care of them. It's very important for us that it will not come from a unit that is really outside of the department, but that's a practice that we help facilitate. This is why it's done. This is kind of this philosophy.
I'll just add to this, maybe do this too, is that we encourage faculty to invite students to apply to be in LA. Just even receiving an email from your professor, it really makes like, oh, I never thought that I could be that. I thought you had to get an A+ in the class in order to help teach it. So that personal contact, you said from someone close to the LA, not someone outside of the department.
Yeah, we don't use LA Campus yet, but we have a system similar, but much less cool. And faculty apply, and one thing that's strange about it is they apply really early. And so it's earlier than you might be expecting to have to think about the next semester. So applying in late September, early October for next semester as an LA faculty, like they don't always expect that. So making sure they know that it's coming. And then the LAs apply and we have what we call the draft and we match people with people, but LA Campus, I believe, will help you do that, sort of like a dating site, sort of. The students pick what they like and then the faculty pick what they like and then the faculty will get a list of applications that they can scroll through, contact those students. But having some branding as well, I think, is really important when you are recruiting LAs. Have faculty, keep track of who you want to be your LAs, keep a list, especially if you teach a course every year. So for example, I teach in a spring general biology class. I keep a list of people who expressed an interest in being in LA, and then when it comes time that next year for them to apply for my class, I'll send them an email and let them know, because they're not going to keep it in their head, and they're not going to expect to have to apply for something in early November for something that doesn't start until mid-January. So I just keep that list, and we've got really beautiful looking brochures and bookmarks, and Jeff's group has a ton of that stuff too. But handing that and having it all over campus, then it helps people apply, because you really want a strong, big applicant pool, I think.
And usually, maybe I can just add quickly?
Yeah.
Usually there's more demand than open positions. That's what we experience, because they start hearing from each other, and so there are a lot of applicants.
I would reiterate the branding. Like Laurel mentioned, we have bookmarks that that describe our program, so I give that to faculty. Faculty can distribute that to students that they think would be appropriate LAs. But more importantly, I give those bookmarks to current LAs. Current LAs have a lot of interaction with students, and they can be pretty good judges of who might potentially be a good LA as a student. So I also work with my LAs, say, hey, help me identify that next generation of LAs. I do sort of similar things that everybody else described. We don't use LA Campus. We sort of have a kludge tool, but talk about paying. No one really talked about that. So we pay our LAs at $10 an hour, 7.5 hours a week. Works out to be about $1,200 for the semester. I know other places do some similar, some do different. I have a colleague at Rutgers who pays her LAs $20 an hour, but I think they only work like five hours a week. So you can make it work. I think it's pretty variable. Questions?
I kind of have a multi-part question. I believe somebody had mentioned on LASSO that there's a test that students can take at the beginning of the semester and the end in order to test their competency for specific classes. If so, what's the name of that test? Is it discipline specific for specific classes? And also, do you need to go through the IRB for that?
Yeah, so I can talk about LASSO. That's one of the next questions on here. So the LASSO platform is a tool that was built by the LA Alliance to look at, for two purposes. One was to do national level research on outcomes in courses that are supported by LAs. And the other was to support instructors, whether they use LAs or not, in assessing their courses. And the idea there is just, and I think what I hear from this whole talk a lot is like reflective practice, right? Like you get instructors to submit an application in August and they're reflecting and thinking about their course 3 months early. And the idea with LASSO is you're assessing your course and you're reflecting on it. And so what LASSO is it administers pre and post tests, which are all research-based assessments. And these are a little different than the tests we write for our own courses, right? Like these are like represent PhDs, multiple research papers have gone into developing these assessments, ensuring that there are strong validity arguments. And LASSO hosts these, and they're free for anyone to administer. You do not need an IRB to use LASSO. You don't need an IRB to do any assessment in your courses, right? That's not a research practice. That's just normal classroom activities. You do need an IRB, Institutional Review Board, if you want to do any research. If you want to take any of that information and then do analysis, you would expect to publish. And the way Lasso works is you go to your account, you set up your account on Learning Assistant Alliance, and that's just one of the 3 tools you really gain access to. You go in there and you create a course, and there's a short survey that I became familiar with the literature on instructional practices and found these questions from the literature, and we integrated that into a course questionnaire. You describe your course and you just choose an instrument that you want. And right now, I think there are about 17 instruments available. And they're in astronomy, mathematics, physics, chemistry, and biology. And we have about 20 other on our waiting list, where we are going to add them as soon as we have the computer programming resources to put them online. And right now we're focusing on building those resources into creating a generalized tool where if you really wanted to put an instrument on there, you could do the programming work, and you could do that. Not everybody can do that. Then your instrument would only take like 30 minutes to put online instead of a day of work. And so you create your course, you choose your assessment, you upload your students' email addresses. And then at the beginning of the semester, you set up the timeline and it gets emailed to the students. And then they take it. Now the students, they will consent to share their data with researchers or not. And they can only share their data if they're over 18. Now that doesn't matter for you as an instructor. You get all of the data back. Then after the pre-test is done, you can get that data back. So if you want to use those assessments to assign people to tables or groups, you can do that. Then at the end of the semester, you do the same thing. You get the post data. And then the platform will analyze that data. It'll give you some effect size metrics for how effective your course is and a little bit of information to interpret that and some graphs. So you can take that and you can include it in your tenure and promotion package to show like how you're doing your evaluation of your teaching. And one of the things we're working on is providing more supports for using that information. But that's basically an overview of Lasso. And so the instruments, we're trying to add more. There might be ones that fit the need for your course. I am a physicist, and like one of the things I did not appreciate is like how diverse intro bio courses are, and astronomy courses. My mother-in-law actually teaches astronomy courses, so I get to hear more about how instruments don't always match up with what's taught in the different courses. Physics is very cut and dry for what's covered in those intro sequences for the most part. Are there any other questions about Lasso?
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
Sure, thanks. In addition to concept inventories, there are also attitudinal assessments on Lasso. So about students' attitudes toward science, as well as beliefs in self-efficacy, and looking also to develop those assessments more to come in the future.
When you think about assessing and trying to understand if what you do works, you can use, as we mentioned earlier, multi-measures. You can start from your attendance. It can continue to your grades. That you can, if you use a common exam between sections, that can be comparable. There are things that you have already that are part of your structure within your course that you can track and just kind of notice and use to understand if there's a change in performance. It can be the DFWs. So you can talk to institutional change, institutional planning. Some of the offices, some of the units can ask for reports about that, but you can do it also yourself. What would be other ways to look for indication of effectiveness?
I think you've done a lot.
So there's variety. Just keep in mind that there are the concept inventories that are accepted tools in the disciplinary community, so they're really good. But there are also, when you're starting, if this is, seems to be maybe an inadequate exam or just you're not ready for that, you can use really little things to see if your students are engaged.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the DWF, and I maybe ask Jeff a question about this, because one of the things I think we think of is like, so DWF, different people interpret that to mean different things. Like some people it's D, withdrawal, and F, and sometimes it's drop, withdrawal, and F. So it's important to clarify what that means when you're talking to other people and what those rates are. The other thing is, I was thinking of is like a lot of the times, and what I'm going to ask Jeff in a second is like how he went about getting DWF rates. But the thing I want to talk about, a lot of the work I do is around quantitative methodologies and how do we analyze data. And so one thing is like, as physicists, you know, or chemists or biologists, you probably don't take a methods course for doing educational research and analyzing DWF rates. So you might not have that expertise. And an advantage of the Alliance is there are probably a lot of people who are really interested in these data and analyzing the data, and also might not or might have those skills. And so if you can coordinate and collect who's interested and knowledgeable about that, or how they properly analyze them, then you can take that information to your institution and maybe form a little collaboration to look at the impacts of the LA Alliance across institutions. So I'm going to ask Jeff about how you went about getting DWF rates and analyzing that data.
Yeah. So every institution has an institutional research office, and these folks need to become your new best friends. You need to have a contact at institutional research. So I early on began to establish a relationship with our institutional research office, and now, because I have a good connection there, I go right to them and say, this is what I'm interested in knowing, and they do the work. I also have access to our student information system through Tableau. We use Tableau, which does some really great work, but I also don't want to spend the time to do that on my own. So this is why I partner with institutional research, and they are all, this is obviously my situation, but they are also interested in this work. This is what they do, from their day-to-day job. So I partner with them to request it, and they do the stuff for me, and it's fantastic. So finding a partner in institutional research or whatever that office is called at your institution is really, really important.
Were there any other questions? Nobody has any burning questions about that? Because I have one last question for Laurel, because she's gotten to talk less, I think, than everybody else, especially than Jeff.
But she has a comment.
You have a comment? Okay, what?
It was about the institutional research. There was a recent publication, it might be 1 or 2 years old now, from the National Academy of Science called Barriers to 2- and 4-Year STEM Degrees. I don't know how many people saw that publication, but one of the recommendations in that publication was that it's very hard. We don't have systems in place at universities and colleges across the country to help us look at the kind of data we care about. It's not that easy. You have to go and ask your institutional research board or institutional research office to get you information, and it should be easier than that. And I think in some ways, things like Tableau readers, anybody else use Tableau readers? I'd never even heard of it until our institutional research person, I asked for these data, and she sent me a Tableau reader, and I was like, I don't want pretty graphs. I want CSV files that I can put into R. I don't need your pretty graphs. But then I realized, wait a minute, I do need your pretty graphs. So she set us up with the Tableau reader, and now we'll put the information in that we want. So we said we want the grade distribution for LA and non-LA supported sections of all of these classes, and then we want 4-year and 6-year pass rates. And now every semester she updates it for us, and we can just have that Tableau reader ready. And now one of the things I think Hagit gave in that handout says, and they give your administration reports of your progress without asking for money when you do it. So give them regular updates. And now we're giving our dean and provost regular updates. I mean, like, look at the pass rates. Here are the pass rates for the LA program. Here's the new data. And the Tableau reader just makes these beautiful looking figures that we can just cut and stick in there. And I underappreciated those Tableau readers.
All right, I think we're close enough to wrap it up. I just wanted to thank Louis and Hagit and Laird and Jeanette and Tanya and other people who I'm not remembering for doing all the hard work of organizing the conference. And I want to thank all of you guys for coming. And thank you guys for sitting up here.